Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Tracy Hermans, and I'm the Community Director with CommerceNext for the Western region. We're a community event series and conference for marketers for retail as well as D2C brands. Today's webinar is on Beyond Guesswork, how Agentic AI unlocks marketing decisioning, with our guest speakers, Kristen Brophy, who's the SVP of Marketing at ThreadUp, Justin Emig, who's the CTO, CDO over at Artisan Lane Furniture, and Sami Aboud, the CTO and co-founder at AMP. We'll be taking your questions, so feel free to load them up during the presentation. But first, I want to share a few announcements. Our next slide. We want to thank our amazing sponsors, AMP, for today's webinar and making it possible with the whole team. Also want to thank our amazing team at CommerceNext. That includes Jenny, Alexa, Corey, Rob, everyone who's behind the scenes making this webinar a total success. A couple of housekeeping notes and events coming up on our next slide. We are going to be in Vegas for next week. Rob, if you don't mind going to the next slide, we're going to be at Top Golf, and I'm really looking forward to Top Golf. It's going to be an amazing event. We will be with over 200 amazing leaders joining us for a fun and relaxing evening. You can practice your swing, you can network. It's going to be really fun, especially given that everyone's going to be in town that week. If we're also busy planning our annual growth show, that's coming up June 23rd to the 24th, and it's going to be in New York City. We'll have over 2,700 attendees and over 150 speakers. The conference is free for leaders at scaled retail and D2C brands. We also have a generous travel program. It's up to $2,000 in travel credit for participating in meetings one-on-one. These meetings have so much value. We were told by so many leaders how they were able to make some key decisions from having these meetings. So feel free to check out the links that Corey can drop into the chat so you can find out more information and register for either Topgolf next week or the Growth Show in June in New York. So Corey, if you could drop those links, that would be great. And then just for next steps on how to use the webinar, Rob, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Excuse me. So we have our past webinars as well as upcoming information on the Growth Show, all the information that we share on our YouTube channel. We have over 500 videos covering all topics across D2C, whether retention, acquisition, agentic, all of these topics. Be sure to check it out on our YouTube channel. It's such an awesome resource, and Corey can share that link with you in the chat as well. Okay, on our next slide, if just as a reminder, because we're recording live, if you miss anything, don't worry. We'll send the link. You can, again, find it on YouTube. I want to just go ahead and share with you how to participate in this channel, as well as how to really navigate the platform. So you'll see on our next slide, there are 4 tabs in the upper right of your screen. You'll see there's chat, Q&A, polls, as well as handouts. That's really up at the top right. You'll see as you toggle up. Chat, it's pretty clear, but use the chat when you want to communicate with the attendees. That includes your speakers, your panelists, as well as anybody within and participating on the webinar today. You can also, it's also a great way to network virtually. You can also see in the polls tab that you can participate there by adding your responses, reading the questions from the audience, and then review final results after we close the poll. And then we'll have the handouts tab, and then you can find more details and any information that we have during the webinar that we can send as a PDF or within the handouts. One of our most interactive features is our Q&A tab. And again, we want to be a community to participate across all of us with any questions, any key call outs. I really encourage you to check this tab out. If you have burning questions, if you want to upvote on the question, if you feel like I missed something, feel free to drop it in that Q&A tab. It's such a great opportunity to cross-pollinate your ideas with leaders and anybody on the call today. Like I said, you can also upvote. So if there's a question that I didn't see, or if somebody hasn't responded, feel free to just click on that upvote, and that signals and gives us an opportunity to check it out and then make sure that we drop it in and pay attention to it. All right, So finally, if you are watching this on the replay, please note that any handouts that are available, any additional information you'll see at the very bottom, there is a button for you to see and replay, and that's at the very, very bottom on that video. All right, so now that we've gone through how to use the platform, please join me in welcoming the CTO and co-founder who has some really great insights and learnings from AMP. We'll go ahead and introduce Sami Aboud and then his handouts as well as his presentation today. So let's take it away.
Yeah, hey everyone, thanks for having me today. I'm Sami, AMP's one of AMP's co-founders and CTO. I'm based out of Paris, France. And what I want to speak to you about today is the shift that's happening in marketing. Marketing used to be a rule-based world, a world of segments and manual optimization. And the question marketing systems are facing today is whether or not they can make better decisions to reflect the real complexity of the world. And to better understand this shift, let's look at how lifecycle marketing has evolved over the years. If we start from the pre-digital era, the rule-based era, something we could call batch and broadcast, we had one marketing message, and that message was just sent for everybody. But from there, at the turn of the century, we evolved to the testing era, where we had different variants. We tested what works best, and then we chose that variant, instead of just arbitrarily choosing one and hoping it's going to work. Now, on top of that, we started getting more nuanced. We started doing optimization. That's what bandits are doing, that we have adaptive messaging. So now all the variants are distributed as a ratio of their performance. And then later in the decade, we started adding machine learning. And we started doing segmentation based on machine learning-based segmentation to predict which users fall into which segment, and then try matching those with the message. Now, if we go until now we're in the agentic era, in the AI era. So we have AI decisioning, which automates experiments and tries to pick the best variant from within a campaign. But then we also have agentic systems. And these agentic systems, they continuously learn and they autonomously interact with users. So now if we zoom out, we can see that we've been slowly evolving from predefined logic to continuous intelligence, where AI makes the decisions. But not all AI in marketing is built the same. And the biggest difference is what the system is actually able to learn. So if I'm going to contrast two types of marketing AI to the old model of rules and segment, what you'd see is something that we'd call campaign AI. Campaign AI optimizes performance. It does that from within a workflow, from within a journey. That's what I'm calling the unit of learning. Now, if you compare that to rules and segments try to optimize coverage, and the unit of learning is the segments. Now, another type of AI is individual AI. And in individual AI, what we try to optimize is understanding. And what are we trying to understand? We're trying to understand the individuals. So individuals become the unit of learning instead of segments or workflows. And a very important dimension in this comparison is this dimension of memory. In the world of rules and segments, there is no memory. And then as we introduce AI, we start adding memory into the equation. So in campaign AI, the memory is local. It's from within the workflow, from within the journey. But in individual AI, we move to a global memory, which is memory that persists across campaigns, across messages, and is attached to the user. So then our personalization reality becomes, what is the best next interaction for this person compared to an average of cohort or the best variant for a very specific workflow? So learning scope changes everything. And I want to show you an example where the old model actually breaks. So let's look at a typical marketing campaign with 4 variants, A, B, C, and D. If we were gonna A/B test this campaign, we would see that A would win the overall. A would perform the best overall. But then when we come to apply this A variant to a single person, to an individual, let's call her Maya, we see that this variant does not land because that's not what Maya is interested in. Now, even if we move to a world of segments where we have segment 1 and segment 2, and then we still test the variants, we see that variant B is winning segment 1 and variant C is winning segment 2. Still, both of those lose with Maya because Maya is actually interested in variant D. So the best variant, it depends on who, depends on when, depends on why. And that's why when we optimize around averages, we actually miss the real opportunity. So if the old model learns too broadly, what needs to replace it is a system that learns in a more focused way and in a more continuous way. So the message I'm saying is simple. The new operating model is not of one-off optimization. It's about continuous intelligence. And the real shift is from campaign-level learning to persistent customer understanding. So the question you're going to ask me now is, but how does the learning actually happen, or how does the learning actually work? So the learning works based on labels, and each one of these labels and each one of the messages, each one of the marketing messages is attached to a set of labels. When an agent is born, or when an agent wakes up for the first time, every label starts with equal probability. And then, based on the interaction between the agent and the user, these labels either increase their probability when facing positive actions from the user, or decrease their probability when facing negative actions from the user. And what's interesting here is that the agent continuously revisits this theory of the customer, this representation of the customer. And that's the thing, that once you're doing it at the person level, that's when learning starts getting more interesting and more specific. So if we look at the preferences of one user across different labels, let's say we have messages that are tagged or labeled with educational content or humorous tone, or widget A, which is a feature, or a CTA that is direct. Or messages about social proof. If we look at the distribution of probabilities for that specific user, we can see here that the purple distribution is pretty low. And that's the social proof distribution. This means that user is not interested in social proof. So the agent of that user would avoid social proof messaging. On the other hand, we can see that the distribution of educational content is pretty high because the user responds to it. So the agent will double down on educational content and show that more often to the user. I want to move to an actual concrete example and compare two different people, so this becomes a little bit clearer. So if we take a user, let's call her Sarah. Sarah is adventure seeking. She's a digital nomad who values experiences over possessions, and she enjoys spontaneous trips and connecting with locals. Now, this live customer model or live customer profile of the user would show us that this user prefers adventure, and then on the trade-off between budget and luxury, she's more into budget, and as we said, she's a spontaneous person. So the kind of push notification that would be matched to that user is a notification that starts with a thrilling, spontaneous adventure on your terms. Now, we can compare that to a completely different person, James, 45 years old, luxury-loving executive who appreciates fine dining and exclusive experiences. He prefers planned, high-end travel. So you can immediately see that they are much more weighted on the luxury trade-off between budget and luxury. They're still spontaneous. So that person will receive a message saying, experience an exhilarating luxury escape designed specifically for you with the freedom to explore at your pace. So it's the same system, just with a different person, different learned traits, and it chooses a different output. So this is not just a different send time or channel, it's a different theory of the customer. And that changes, and this is reflected in how the brand communicates with that specific user. And that's the difference between workflow optimization or campaign AI and individual intelligence. And that's the real core idea I wanted to frame. The shift is from rules to learning the individual person. And with that, I'd love to hand it back over to you and seeing how this shows up in practice. Thank you.
For right now, I'd like to go over the polls. My name is Jenny Marlowe. I'm the head of content. So Robert, if you pull up the slides, we're going to go to our first poll. So question 1, Agentic AI, real revenue driver or overhyped trend? We're going to pull up the slides now, or the polls now. So we have A, driving meaningful incremental sales. B, improving efficiency more than revenue. C, too early to tell. D, mostly hype for now. Or E, other. You can add it in the chat. So I'm seeing the results coming in, and it looks like B is actually in the lead. We have improving efficiency more than revenue at 40%. And then the secondary one is driving meaningful incremental sales. Thank you so much. I'll go to question number 2 now. Pulling up question number 2, how is your organization using agentic AI today? We have A, exploring, evaluating vendors. B, piloting in limited channels like email, PDP on-site ads. C, actively driving revenue. Or D, not currently using agentic AI. Okay, so it looks like a lot of you aren't using agentic AI yet. We have that at 33%, and then tied in with that is piloting in limited channels like email, PDP, on-site ads. Very interesting results. Thank you so much, Corey, for running those polls. Tracy, I want to hand it back over to you, and I think it's time to pull up your panelists.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. All right, I'm happy to go ahead and introduce everyone. Thanks also, Sammy, for your presentation. So let's get Justin, CDO, CTO from Artisan Lane, as well as Kristen Brophy, SVP of Marketing over at ThreadUp. Welcome, guys. Hey, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Thank you. Hello.
So I'm going to go ahead and start off with the question about just setting context. So many organizations have systems and marketing journeys that appear to be working. But I think the big question is, how do brands know when it's time to move beyond what's good enough or what's baseline and start exploring agentic tools? Like, what is the aha moment that really helps in determining when they're ready to make that decision? And Kristen, I think let's go ahead and start with you.
Yeah. Well, hi, everybody. Good morning for those of you on the West Coast. Good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast. And if you're somewhere else, happy day. I'd say like the thing that for us at ThreadUp, our framing is that a signal that it's time to evolve for us isn't always when something is broken. In fact, for us, it's when things are going well, how could they go better and how could we better serve our customer? So for example, at ThreadUp, we have over 4 million unique items on our site at any given time. And each one is like a single SKU. It's an N of one, it's a unique item. And so our entire business model is really about getting the right item in front of the right customer at the right moment. And so the good enough moment for us really came when we recognized that the scale of our catalog had really just outpaced our ability to manage that scale of personalization. Just to give you another data point, we add roughly 65,000 new items to the site every day. So a rules-based system, an A/B test, no matter how well engineered, can't really keep pace with that level of inventory dynamism, nor the individual SKUs that we have, especially when you think about not just on the PLP or the landing experience, but in your email channels and in our paid channels, et cetera. So for us, like the real unlock for these agentic tools is helping us move from making these decisions that really just appeal to the broad average into making decisions that are best in real time for individual customers across our channels. And so that's how we sort of landed on the idea that good enough was really time to move beyond.
And I love that you brought up that it's this broader, like the baseline or the good enough is the broader. But when we're really looking at segmenting, and I can imagine for ThreadUp, you have so many different types of personas and targets and different ideas of KPIs and what those lifetime values of each customers really are. And so as you're aligning it, you guys really came together to make a decision to let technology do a little bit more of what you guys can do. So I guess explain to me what that looks like from kind of like letting go or like understanding when you were ready, just more from an emotional readiness of, okay, I don't really want to be in the weeds. I don't really want to be, we understand our personas, but we want to better the readiness and let go in some way of that day-to-day as marketers.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you're hitting on is like a real tension, I think, especially for marketers, with this idea of like a control paradox. And I mean, like, I don't want to speak for all marketers. I myself can err on the side of control freak. Like, I have a very deep relationship with control. I want to make sure that the button's in the right place and the color that we chose is right and the subject line's exactly perfect. And so we've sort of like been trained as marketers to obsess over these details. I've written and rewritten subject lines myself, which is maybe too in the weeds. You're like, oh no, she's really in the weeds as a manager. Anyway, I think we agonize over these things, and they mean that we spend an enormous cognitive load and operational energy on tactical decisions that, I will repeat again, optimize for the average. And so how much money are you leaving on the table when you're optimizing for an average versus optimizing for what's best for segments or even an individual customer? And so, and this is nascent technology. I want to be really clear about that. However, our bet is that agents can make those tactical decisions much better than we can by just A/B testing things like subject lines. And so we want to give those more tactical decisions to agents so that they can learn and reproduce successful results faster, which means that we can reframe our idea of control as marketers. We are not giving up control. We're moving it to a higher level. We will still control things like the brand experience, the guardrails, the business priorities, the success criteria. I think that's a really important one for agents. You have to be the one who gives them the carrot and who says, this is what success means. That is still, having control over your business, but we're relinquishing every tactical output. So it actually, my hope, and again, since it's nascent, this is what we're striving toward, is that we level up and we are thinking about strategy and we're thinking about where the customer experience goes versus having to optimize subject lines, button placement, which photograph is better. Those are things that like I'm excited to give to an agent.
Yes. I love that too. And I mean, Sammy, that actually really brings up what you were talking about with was the girl Natalie or Natasha in your example, where you brought up a very specific individual and proposed different scenarios where you can actually, to me, that's true personalization. Like, you've really built out a person, what she's doing, where she's at, where you could better reach her. Kristen, you brought up, it's not just email, there's all these other touch points, and we know this. I think we all see it visually, what the touch point looks like, but to really matter, to be relevant, we really have to, in some ways, let go of that hands down approach to be enabling us to be more strategic. Justin, I want to touch up on a point that you had mentioned from when we first got together. We started talking about this. Where are you guys seeing this at Artisan Lane yourself? Like, where are you guys seeing it in terms of where you're letting go and where you're making more strategic decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think my area of moving beyond good enough really is three spots. I think, the one is the decision latency. I think, I always love the question of, how did the campaign perform? I mean, we're already thinking in the past, we're already optimizing for a past state and not closer to real time. Second is, a lot of this manual optimization loops. I think, as Kristen was saying, we care so much about the minutia. We obsess over the minutia. We're always adjusting our A/B, changes. To me, it's all about the execution there and not decisioning. We're allowing the systems to just execute. We're not allowing them to make a decision with obviously a better data set than we have. And then the last one I say is consumers are channel agnostic. I think we really obsess over the channel, and the consumers just want to shop. The consumer doesn't know where they first saw the brand. They might not even be familiar where they're seeing it right now. And I think a lot of those rule-based journeys, they struggle with that level of dynamic behavior. So I mean, all in all, I think where the agentic systems, to me, aren't replacing marketers. They're just allowing, I think Kristen said this even better than I will, but we're allowing marketers to spend more time deciding on what experience should the brand deliver as opposed to how to deliver it, relative to the mechanics. So
yeah, well, I really love that, because you bring in the timing aspect, right? And I think that goes back to what Sammy was saying as well, where some of the issue with the rule-based journeys or where you have these static rules is that it creates a ceiling, it creates a bit of a cap and that limitation. If you look at it from time window, like you said, Justin, where you're already talking about the past, and by the time you guys get together on Monday to look at your campaigns, it's already happened. What was that, like a week ago, or however long you originally set those rules? It's really not addressing the real time. Sammy, maybe you said it more eloquently than I did, especially in your accent, but is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, to me, the most important aspect is that if your team is constantly tuning journeys, adding exception, adding more rules, and you're still feeling like you're reacting too slowly, that's the good moment to say, wait a second, there's a problem here, there's a growth limiter, because in the end, customer behavior is much more. Is much richer and much more dynamic than the system that manages it when you're sticking to rules and static decisions. So it's like when the system's complexity just outgrows the marketer's ability to scale their operation and manually catch up. And that's where we see that agentic AI shifts the model best from pre-planned or orchestration to adaptive decision making, and that's why that's the only way that you can actually put the human back in the middle, because in the end it's the human that wants to see all of these interactions, and these humans are so complicated, or not complicated, sorry, complex and rich. That you just need a bit bigger scale and better decision quality. And that's why this is different from just adding more rules and doing another A/B test.
I love that. And from what I'm hearing, it reminds me a little bit of parenting, where some of the hands-on stuff where it's really seeing the forest through the trees. And then that depends on, age and life stage and where your kids may be at. But I tell my daughter all the time, like, try to be a little bit above here and not so, nose to the ground. And I'm sure she's just thinking, I'm not there, Mom. But I can't help but think, that adaptive part, that being able to adjust in real time, it's just where that's the goal and that's where people want to be. And so I guess that kind of ties back to when a company is ready to make and explore agentic tools. I think it becomes less of a challenge about the type of technology to the mindset, really tapping into when people are ready and when a process can be presented. So I'd love to hear, how do you have that discussion with marketing teams? Kristen, you talked about so many sort of this nascent and really subjective lens in some way about what you see as the opportunity. But even just from what you said, I got excited and thought, yes, I would be happy to give up control on the day-to-day and really be able to do more sort of higher level, higher touch decisioning. What do those conversations look like when you're potentially restructuring teams or really proposing idealized workflows?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said in the past, the state of this technology has so much opportunity, but it is nascent. And so the path to what success looks like when you are exploring and implementing agentic technology will be winding, and it will require a refactoring of process and talent as much as it requires a refactoring of your technological approach. And I just think that's really worth grasping, because when you are faced with something that's sort of undefined with a winding path to success, it can be challenging. And I think it's good to recognize that as a leader in your organization. And so at ThreadUp, we have a really lean lifecycle marketing team. The way we're thinking about this shift is in two primary ways. The first is operationally. So we talked about this, but how do we move from managing these static legacy lifecycle logic where actually we don't have control, we think we have control, but it's really guesswork. And where we're documenting all these things in static PDFs, and we've mapped out these complex flows, to building. So instead, moving that from building and architecting systems that scale without that process management and overhead. And so, like I said, the goal is to let AI handle those real-time tactical decisions. So that's a process and organizational mentality shift that I think teams need to be prepared to make. The second is that the investment in data science and data engineering to make sure this is true is also a really big factor in this transition. And I know that's probably already something that a lot of marketers on this call have had to deal with other marketing technology implementation, but it's more critical than ever. And so at ThreadUp, our data science and data engineering teams are as innovative as they are technical. And I think one of the underappreciated organizational changes is the shift of how much closer marketing even needs to sit to those functions. And so if your marketing team is operating today in isolation from the data infrastructure and engineering and science teams, you're just not ready to go agentic. And I think you need to look at how you're ingesting data, how you're structuring data, how the tooling you have around your data infrastructure, and how you're planning to pass it between the agentic tools that you're evaluating, and really have those conversations with the vendor and your teams, because there's upfront work to be done there, but it can probably have a really large payoff and will make things easier and scalable in the future. But just be ready for that initial upfront investment.
That's so interesting that you say that, because earlier, Kristen, you said that marketers with more strategic decisioning, you can really focus on the brand pillars and reinforcing what, from a brand guidelines, like what your position is, what you stand for, and fine tune that. Now, with what you're saying, by making sure your teams are leaning in closer to the data science and engineering teams, I would imagine then that's not very common, where you get the moment to free your marketers from day-to-day segmentation or day-to-day like adjusting rules and PDF files for what they have to do, letting go of that, allowing them to be doing what they were hired to do, defining and redefining those brand pillars, and then sitting so close to marketing. I think that's so empowering to have that structure, but also, I mean, not usual, right? It's just not, especially for a lot of companies where there's a lot of, as you said, like legacy systems. I'd be curious what Justin and Sammy, what you guys want to add to those observations.
You want to go first, Sammy? You want me to go first?
No, go ahead, please.
All right. I mean, to me, I just get so fired up over this, because I don't think it's a more exciting time to be a marketer than it is right now. I mean, I think for decades, we were executioners. We were the ones that turned the levers or turned the knobs, pulled the levers. And I think that if we're giving agentic systems the ability to take on more of the operational work, I think the legacy role that we played has to shift. We have to move from, how do we build this journey, to what outcome are we trying to achieve? And then what signals should the system respond to? And to me, this it's no longer a shift from human to machine. It's more of a campaign operator to, focusing on CX, decision frameworks, because I think the real-time nature of this can't be overstated. I mean, you think we have a constant evolving level of input. And if we moment in time any of this, it's dated, where all of this is shifting constantly, and we're never going to be able to adjust that quickly. So I think that it's about driving outcomes to me.
Yeah, it's actually interesting when you're saying like shifting from human to machine, because what's actually happening is that we're just giving the mechanics to the machine back. And we're taking, as humans, what humans need to do, which is figure out my brand, my business goals, what are my constraints, why are users using me, what's my added value, why is it important for them. So that's like that for me, like giving the mechanics to the machine, back to the AI, is what creates space for all this higher value work, and that needs some adaptation time. But yeah, that's what in my view should empower marketers and should make their job even much more challenging and much more interesting in the future.
Thank you guys for that. I'm going to go ahead and take two questions from the audience. I think the first question is actually two questions buried into one. So it's from Tuvish. I apologize in advance because I'm going to butcher the last name, Bharadwaj, the SVP of e-commerce. The question is for Kristen and Justin. Are you currently investing in creating synthetic audiences, backtesting against numerous real consumer interviews, research, insights, and interaction data points? That's the first question. And then to further explain, then this way the agents can work expeditiously off those synthetic audiences and cohorts to A/B test, forecast new product demand, higher converting landing pages and such, with higher ROI life cycles. That's the first question.
I think it's a great question. I would love to talk to you offline if you're seeing success with synthetic audiences. So we do use synthetic audiences for UX research today, but to get some quick feedback about where we want to take feature and product development, what we've found is that they're like 85% accurate. And so I've been a little reticent to introduce synthetic audience results into our agentic systems. For now, we are doing real-time behavioral data only because that's 100% true. And so that's where we're at with synthetic audiences for now. I am interested in how synthetic audiences can help do this in the future. And I think that there's probably way more expedition we could do on how to leverage that data. We're not doing it today. But if you are seeing success with it, then I would like to hear about it.
I literally was going to say the same thing. I'd love to hear, if they're seeing success. I'm similar. Our success rate is not that high. It's not even the 85%. So to me, it was running them kind of in parallel, and unfortunately, the real time is winning out. I'll call it the real humans are winning on this one. But I know this is going to evolve. I know this. It's just the stakes get high, and I look at it, especially furniture. For some reason, we buy furniture around tentpole events in the United States. The presidents inspire us to buy furniture, so we don't get many instances of. We don't get another swing at President's Day 2026. So for us, it was a risk to introduce synthetic heavily into those. So again, will we get there? Most likely, but no, not today.
All right, and I'm gonna thank you guys, and then I'm gonna go ahead and task you with one more question from Sleek Flores, the AVP over at Product Management at Bath & Body Works. Do any of the panelists see AI agentic optimization decisioning adoption being more heavily or easily done by marketplace type brand retailers versus house of brand retailers, or is there no difference at all?
Yeah, I have a perspective on that. I mean, I think the way I'm interpreting your question is not necessarily heavily or easily from a resourcing perspective, but from an efficacy perspective. And so I'm speaking as a marketplace marketer, and agentic really does help us because we have such an enormous catalog, and that helps us a lot. And I can see why you asked the question. From a retailer perspective, I have heard of a lot of retailers, and I'm sure Sammy has a perspective on this too, because you work with businesses that are not just marketplaces. But I think it can be really interesting to explore channel orchestration and message prioritization. So for example, if you're on the front lines of lifecycle marketing, what I can imagine happens is many people in the business are asking you to tell the customer about the thing that they're working on. And so how do you know which one is most valuable? And historically, you've had to probably sequence those messages and send them out, week after week. And nobody likes to hear, hey, your message has to wait a week. But in an agentic world, you can let that agent make decisions about how to upsell your audience, how to cross-sell your audience, what message is right or what feature is right for which audience. So I could see it still being very useful and effective for brand retailers who are really trying to make comms prioritization decisions and trade-offs.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kristen. And to be honest, I don't think there is a huge difference between these two types of businesses, specifically from an agentic AI perspective, because the things that you're looking at are who's your user, what do they care about, and that can be mapped either across the different dimensions of the marketplace or across the different brands in the house.
Yeah, last comment I'll make there is, just to tie back to furniture, we're a highly visual business that has a high degree of subjectivity. Somebody might love a, brown leather, a transitional look, a traditional look. So to me, I think it goes back to what Sammy says. It's, what the consumer wants. And we can have one sofa with 20,000 variants, and that would be, of course, that's not going to speak to everybody, but within that, it will. So us is how quickly do we be able to surface that variant that they want, as opposed to looking through 19,999.
Thanks for that. I mean, I want to get back to, this touches on an earlier point that you guys brought up. When we were talking about the control paradox on the call earlier, what tension do leaders face when moving from those rule-based marketing to more agent-driven decisioning, especially because you guys have really robust catalogs? I'd like to sort of park here for a moment because that control paradox is so common across marketers in face of changing technology. So really would love to highlight that tension and see, what are the leaders facing when encountering this?
I'll jump on this. And so, I mean, I look at this, we're marketers, we love control. I think Kristen kind of mentioned that earlier. And I don't know if there's a bigger example of relinquishing control than an EV. Or AV, I'm sorry, an autonomous vehicle. I think you first time you've been in a Waymo or a Zoox, you remember that experience because
have you been in one yet? I have not.
Yeah. And
Okay.
and here in Dallas, Zoox is coming really, really soon. So, and I think, when my first experience with Zoox was in Vegas, and I'll tell you, like, you get in it, there is no steering wheel. I think the difference is great between Waymo and Zoox, in that there is no steering wheel, there is no pedals. That control removed immediately. I mean, so once you start relinquishing that control, it hits you and you're like, look at what else I can do with my life that I'm not sitting behind a steering wheel focusing. And at that point, any issue that I had was gone, and now I'm like, well, now I'm going to be so productive. So now I don't want to do anything that is not with an autonomous vehicle, so I think that same can be related back to the agentic. Again, we think we have to control every click, but we don't actually need to. When you start retrusting the control or trusting the agents to handle this, you realize the value you get.
Yeah. So I live in Paris and technology takes time to get here. And I didn't catch Waymo when I was in SF last time. But I think that the autonomous driving is a really good example because most people don't really care about how finely you press on the pedal to exert that control. Some people do, and I like driving as well, but most people just don't. And the same applies to marketing. The tension is, and the problem is that marketers are just so used to controlling the vehicle in such a way, and there's comfort in defining the journey when you're doing rule-based marketing because you check the content, you approve the logic, you know exactly what went out. It feels good. The problem is that this level of control comes with an opportunity cost. So you're spending your time optimizing all of these tactical decisions, and customers experience these messages very briefly. But on your side, you're missing the broader strategic decisions that actually end up mattering more than that single message that this user spends a small fraction of time is. And this feeling of precision basically comes at a level of impact. And I think this is what Kristen was saying, that I used to optimize subject lines. But yeah, by optimizing subject lines, Kristen is not able to spend enough time doing potentially more impactful things. So yeah.
No, I think that's great. I mean,
subject line writing really was,
I know. I don't think, Kristen, I'm sure you're great at subject line writing. I'm sure you love it. But I mean, I remember being in the city and seeing a Waymo pull up right next to me as I was in an Uber. And I thought, oh, it's a bit of a trip to see that. I'm a little more type A OCD. So I do, Sammy, like someone not going too hard on the brakes. So I was curious what the experience was like in AV. But coming also from LA, I see the opportunity anytime you're on the 405 or the 5 at 5 p.m. or anytime after 2 p.m. on a weekday. There's so much opportunity. So it brings up the question of scale, right? Like not just being tactical, but how do you scale when letting go and allowing for that volume of opportunity to come back. We do have a couple of questions. Matthew, CMO of Personalize, excuse me, one concern with agentic AI is that without shared govern memory, you can end up with inconsistent messaging, duplicated or conflicting outreach, stale context, and decisions that marketing teams cannot easily explain or control. Are you solving for that? Are there examples of that? That's a great question.
I can take this one. That's true that you need shared governed memory. And that's true that you need to put constraints, and that's true that you have to make sure that consistency is there. The thing is that when you build such a system, one of the most important things to build is also a governing mechanism and an audit trail. When I was speaking earlier, what I said was that agents learn with labels, and then these labels drive the decision of the agent. So every decision the agent needs to make has to have the stamp of all the labels that were there and their values. So then afterwards you can go and debug and say, okay, this agent made this decision because of this factor and that factor and that factor, and then you can trace it back. So I believe that's super important. And then plus like a global governing mechanism, so you can clearly set what are my guardrails and what are my even legal constraints and the things that I just don't want the agents to be able to do.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and really just talk about for when you are ready and you are exploring agentic AI in different systems, what are additional barriers when adopting a more adaptive marketing system? I think, Justin, you brought up on our call that there's a data readiness or even an infrastructure readiness challenge, or there could be team workflows that you uncovered during the process that aren't ready, as Kristen, you mentioned. So what are some other barriers that you guys might encounter when getting to this place of adoption?
I can start on this one. I think the versioning, I think, is absolutely a great one that came up in the question. To me, I think it's fragmentation. I mean, data is disparate. I also think one that we don't love to talk about is legacy systems. Most of us, many of us have legacy systems. The entire banking industry runs on 50-year-old AS400s. And so I think that there is bridging that gap of, there is large enterprises with legacy systems, being able to bring them in. And again, it's just in silos. There's a lot of middleware that's doing a good job of connecting silos. So I do think that the fragmentation, the disparate nature of data, I think that is one. And then, fixing all that, again, there's a whole sub-industry of AI tagging right now, just because you're trying to create hygiene in your data. So, and then the last one I'll kind of say is organizational trust. I still think it goes back to, yes, we are control freaks. Get a finance person in the room, and then the control request jumps a lot higher. So, not necessarily even regulatory.
Right. I guess in a maybe more proactive way, you could even think of it as a checklist. Sammy, like what would be when is a brand or what would a brand uncover and realize during the process? Are these steps that show that we are ready? For instance, we don't have some of the guardrails that may have been mentioned from Justin, but do we have a clear use case? Is there already alignment? You probably see this more often when you're working with teams, but is there a general sense for when they are ready, and when you could almost create a checklist of here's when you're ready and here's how I see it?
Yeah. So actually, most people assume that the readiness is mostly about data maturity and infrastructure maturity, and these things matter. But in practice, organizational maturity is what matters the most. So does the team trust the system enough to let it make decisions? Do they have workflows and an operating model to set up the system for success without reverting to old habits? Guardrails matter. Does the team realize that? And does the team realize that part of the control will actually be let go. Are they comfortable with that? And in our experience, the brands that succeed the most are the ones that start with a clear use case, clear boundaries, and also open-mindedness and willingness to learn. Because you don't have to solve everything at once. You don't want to like demolish the house and rebuild it. But you need internal alignment about which decisions you're okay with becoming adaptive.
Great. Okay, we have another question. I think this is a really interesting question coming from a creative director, Leah Faston at Gen AI, creative director and photographer. How are you thinking about agentic AI and personalized creative asset creation? Asset creation comes up quite a bit, whether it's campaign or post asset creation. So this is such a great question. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I think this is one of those places where you can have a little bit more control. And what I mean by that is you can create all of the content that AI serves, that your agentic system decides to serve. So your customers aren't going to receive anything that you didn't approve on some level. So I think that's like a helpful, for me, it helps me sleep at night. The second thing that I think, and so we're right now on a pilot with AMP, and the thing that I really appreciate about their tool is what you want to make sure of is that when you are creating assets, you are very clear on the goal of those assets and what you're trying to help the agent decision on. And so you're not creating like 5 different versions of a piece of creative in different colors. You're saying, hey, let me test attitudinal messages. Maybe this customer responds to excitement. This one responds to a sober but promotional. This customer responds to XY, emotional or attitudinal test. And so being really clear about what you're trying to decision on and learn from in the personalizations of your assets is really, really critical. And that's something we're starting to do with the AMP tool, is being able to tag different assets with different tonality. Same thing with features. Some customers might respond better to some features versus others. And so we've created varying assets that help us understand, or that help us communicate different things. And so my recommendation as you're thinking about asset creation is, what is the goal of the assets you're trying to create? And is there enough differentiation in those assets to help you learn and help the agent learn over time?
Great. Yeah, that's a great framework, especially just for current, without personalizing, but just laying as a solid baseline. So we have just enough time for our last question, and it kind of touches on this question that was fielded by the audience. But how are you, when you're studying that framework, how are you determining success factors and measuring across KPIs, whether it's engagement, conversion, retention, especially given that it is adaptive? Do you have some examples? I know that you are in a pilot, Kristen, but there may be some other examples, Sammy, that you have to show a team that it is working based on KPI and measurement.
You want to go first, Sammy?
Yeah, sure. So to me, actually, the interesting thing here is that usually marketing heavily indexes on what's easiest to measure. So clicks, conversions, short-term revenue, and those need to be linked somehow to the message, because this is what our current systems allow us to do. What to me the promise of or the potential in agentic systems is that they can also, because they accompany the user, they can take into account longer term effects, and they can do this trade-off between, do I get the user to click now or convert in 3 or 4 days? And this is what the agentic systems unlock, because we want our customer to remain open to hearing from us the next week and the next month, because it's a relationship. So yeah, to me, this is the shift that makes it most valuable.
Yeah, I'd build on that and say the thing that's really important if you're going to go on this journey is teasing out what is a business success metric and what is an agentic success metric. And so what are you training your agents on and telling them is success? is probably different from the core outcome and business goal you're trying to drive. And so what we did for this pilot is we said, what is the business goal that is most important to us to hit? And for us, it's early customer retention. And so what we understand, and this is an example of how like we level up as marketers now with these tools, the important thing for us to understand is what are those key behaviors that are happy path signals that mean a customer is going to retain. And so then those are the signals that we want to feed our agents to help make sure that they're putting the customer on the right path, because we know, to Sammy's point, that the medium term objective is that retention over a certain time horizon. And so my advice to the leaders on this call is being really clear about understanding the difference, being clear about what KPIs and success metrics are leading, and then what you're really driving toward with either your pilot, or if you're more mature, what are the main outcomes you're trying to drive across the business.
I mean, to expand on that, Kristen, I'm not sure if it's too early, but because you mentioned retention, I'm wondering, is there a channel or is there an area where you see that value first in retention? Would it be email? Is it going to be in paid media? I mean, is it too early to say, or is it almost myopic to say whether it's on site? And maybe Sammy, you too, and Justin, is there somewhere where that adaptive decisioning creates value first? Because you said retention, I was just thinking if it's channel specific or if it's maybe offsite.
I'm channel agnostic about, I think it's the beauty about Agentic, or hopefully the beauty about Agentic, is that it will show up in the place that it's best for the customer. And so like I it's not a myopic question, it's just a reframing of like how we have traditionally thought about success outcomes in marketing versus how we need to think about it now, which is rather than looking at is email doing its job, it's like, what is the best channel for the customer for us to be communicating with that? And so I'm not making that channel decision. The agent is making is it a push? Is it an SMS? Is it an RCS? Is it a site pop-up? Those are the things that we are hoping to learn from this pilot versus saying we're trying to optimize our email channel, which is how we used to do it. So it's an evolution.
I love that. I mean, it's even the question itself is sort of looking at the averages, if you will, because it goes back to like, is it a channel? Is it an offsite? When it's really, like you said, Kristen, it's so specific to the individual and to the customer, and the agent will hopefully allow us to reveal what that is. We are right at the top of the hour, so I want to thank you guys for joining us for the call and for sharing your experiences and thoughts on, as well as thought leadership on this matter. And again, appreciate AMP for sponsoring and being our co-host. But thanks again, you guys. I really appreciate it. So much that was said here. I want to make sure we can deliver follow-up bullets, and thanks to our audience for participation and for questions, but really appreciate your guys' time.
Thank you.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, great questions. Bye.
Bye.